Hey Drac, are you awake?
You're awake. You're awake.
How was your time in Canada?
It's good. Good trip.
How many videos did you make?
Zero videos.
Well, do you know what today is?
I do not. What are we gonna do?
It's Friday.
Hello everybody, welcome to Did Not Work. It did not work. Hello everyone and welcome to Top 5 Fridays, because it isn't dead until I say it's dead. And I'm undead, so let's do this. Alright, so a very requested Top 5 Friday was do the top 5 scopes that Nerf has made. And that's a really interesting one. I did the stocks that Nerf has made because I think that stocks are a very pertinent, very useful part of the hobby. In my opinion, is relevant. The overall winner of this one, I'll tell you right now, is gonna be no Nerf scope. They are all very bad. The fact of the matter is that Nerf scopes provide zero magnification, and Nerf blasters in general are so inaccurate by nature of their projectiles that it doesn't really matter what kind of optics you put on them. Now for certain things like Snickers cages, like pseudo Snickers cages, like things that have the scar barrels from Singapore, scopes can become more and more useful, but still I think that ultimately eyeballing with iron sights is the best way to go, which is why most of my personal blasters either have zero optics or very minimal optics, because I don't really like optics. However, for the purposes of this list, we will be talking about the top 5 scopes in Nerf for a very large period of the hobby and blasters, and we'll kind of be going from a pseudo aesthetic standpoint, pseudo utility standpoint, which brings us right into our honorable mentions, which is a very new, very recent blaster. I wanted to get it in here because this is cool. So our honorable mention is this kind of funky ladder sight that pops up. So I like that it's spring-loaded. I think that that's super duper fun. I really like that it's on a sniper style blaster. It's bolt action, which fits in with it, and there are iron sights built into the blaster as well. So I like that it's super minimalist. It reminds me very much of like almost like a speed sight, like a pop-up, like an imbus or something like that. I think that that's kind of cool. And I mean, ultimately, again, these things are not particularly useful, so I like this one. I think that this is a fine honorable mention. It's very new, it's very recent, and it's pretty unique and pretty cool. I don't know, I'm doing my best John Wick here, and it's just ridiculous. That's gonna be a pretty common theme here. Let's go! Coming in at number 5, we have the Nerf Hyper Sight Expandablast. Now, I once made one of these NIC worthy and called it Hop-A-Blast. This blaster is unique because it had a really interesting expanding feature. Now, this one is not, it is stock, but it's not fully together. This foregrip is usually missing, as is this piece up here, which holds your extra mega darts. It fired vintage megas, and then there should be a stock piece. Normally, pulling the foregrip out should turn this into a full primary where this extends out forward and the stock extends and drops out back. Now, since this one does not have the stock and it seems as though the spring mechanism here is not working, I'm just using it to illustrate why it is the number 5 blaster on my top 5 Nerf scopes. And this scope does 2 things, both of which I really like. First off, it's a low profile scope that is integrated into the blaster. That's very similar to why I like the Raptor Strikes scope here, is because it is a low profile sight that's integrated into the blaster. That means it's hard to lose, which is really important, especially on vintage blasters, and it doesn't really get in the way. Now, the other thing that I really like about it, and you'll be able to see here, is that even though this one's old and the rubber is a little hard, it's got this soft rubberized kind of eye aperture here, which reminds me a lot of like actual sights and scopes, and I think that that is really, really cool. The dart holder, I guess, of sorts up here actually creates relatively decent iron sights, but most importantly, this would be very comfortable if that is how you chose to run it. Now, however, it's of note that if you are running it and you are on it like this and then you do pull the trigger, you're gonna get what I can't actually tell you what the NIC calls it, but it's face blank, and it's when the priming mechanism smashes into your cheek. It's an unpleasant sensation. So not super ideal, but relatively comfortable. And again, if you just pull off to the side a little bit, it is fine. Most people don't do that. So that's the number 5 Nerf sight scope of all time. Let's go through and show you our number 4. Coming in at number 4, we have another tried and true classic, and that is the Nerf Longshot Scope. The Nerf Longshot Scope has been used, painted in sci-fi movies, etc. ad nauseum. It is a really, really classic design for a scope. It's got these faux plastic adjustable things, so it looks pretty cool, and it's been used in a lot of different props and productions because of that. Also, the Longshot is such a classic blaster that's been used for all sorts of aesthetic purposes, and that most Nerf collections, even thrifted collections, have a Longshot scope in them. I think that this is the yellow in-strike one, this is the blue front barrel, both of which came with scopes that match them, and this should be the zombie strike variant of the scope, which I think that you can still get to this day. It's a transparent scope. It's got a built-in reticle, which is kind of cool, and while it doesn't magnify, it looks really good. It's really just on the list because it's so classic, it's so easy to get your hands on one, and it looks relatively cool. Like, again, since these don't do anything, what's the purpose of having one? Well, you want to achieve an aesthetic, and if it's good enough for Hollywood, it should be good enough for you as well. It looks great painted, unpainted, etc. It's just a nice scope. It does have a fully transparent aperture. I can see the camera through it, which is pretty cool, and it has all of the bells and whistles that makes it look like very tactical, very sci-fi-esque. I think that it's really neat. That's more or less all there is to it. That is the Nerf Longshot Scope, and it is our number 4. Let's start getting a little more unique, a little more complex, a little more modern. Coming in at number 3, we have something unique to the Modulus line, and that's all these funky color-matched accessories. Now, this and this are 2 relatively new scopes. This one came from the Regulator. I want to say that this one came from one of the expansion kits, and they both look really cool. So similar to the Longshot, they have all sorts of interesting designs. This one is also a barrel attachment. That's relevant. We're going to throw it on the world's only Modulus Strife. Very interesting repaint. You can see that it looks good as a barrel attachment, but it also has the ability to slide on and be a scope, and that's why this is number 3. Both of these are kind of together as number 3, but I think that they're both very interesting. This one I like a lot. That's a very unique use of the 50 caliber Nerf barrel style material as a viewport. It's honestly almost the same size. It's only a little bit smaller than the Longshot's viewport, and while it does not have a built-in reticle for obvious reasons, it looks pretty good. It's very funky, very different, and pretty neat. Now, the other one I think looks much cooler, is much more unique, and that's because it's got this really funky 3-point sight going on inside. And hopefully you guys can see that on camera, but a really interesting from the front profile perspective on this one. Still with the faux dials, still with the eye aperture here. Now this one is completely hollow, which is kind of good. There are advantages and disadvantages. If you've ever thrifted one of these, the fact that it is a sealed system means that somehow when dirt and or water and or mildew or whatever gets inside these, I'll be honest, they get really gross, like turbo gross, and there's really no way to open these without breaking them open, which is pretty evident in my original Longshot mod guide. So the fact that this one's open means that you could wash it if you ever had to, and a lot of the times Nerf guns become outside toys and that's relevant, but this one looks really, really cool. Like, I like it a lot. Something about the 3-prong thing makes me think Predator, makes me think vintage sci-fi, and that's like really an aesthetic that I super duper dig. So again, this list is going to be biased, it's my list, but these 2 Modulus scopes tied for number 3 because they're modern, they go on all the Modulus blasters, they're both very unique and very, very cool. Moving on. Number 2 is also a Modulus scope, and continuing with how the Longshot scope just looks cool, it looks even cooler if it's kind of reduced down like this. So this is a slightly smaller profile, much more modern, still utilizing that hollow technology where it's easy to clean version of the Longshot scope. Now, designed with Modulus in mind, this is a sniper scope for sure. I think I might have it backwards. Now's a pretty good time to admit, guys, that I don't necessarily know which direction this is supposed to go on. I'm pretty sure it's like this, where your eye goes here. I see you. This is just a really cool looking scope. But why is it number 2 and the Longshot number 4? Well, it's not this one that's actually special. This is number 2 exclusively because I have one of the, like, I don't know, if you're a big James Bond fan, I have the rarest scope that Nerf has ever made, realistically. So every once in a while, Hasbro does these super limited, serialized versions of things, and while the camo pattern eventually made its way to the UK, the original camo pattern scopes were given out exclusively to very special friends of Nerf themselves. So I think that if I wanted to rattle off people that I know who have them, I know that Dude Perfect has some. I know that like a couple of executives from Walmart, Target, and Toys R Us have some. And then I know that my buddy Coop772 has a later serialized number of them, as well as a few other friends from the NIC. And I think that mine is super duper special because I have an incredibly low serial number. This is the 007 model, so it is the 7th one. And I'm a big Bond fan, so like, come on, it's the Secret Agent Sniper Scope. Like, it's so cool. So this is one of the treasured pieces of my collection. I could not make a video about scopes without like kind of humble bragging about how lucky I am to have such a unique piece in my collection. I will never ever sell it. Anytime I show something like this on camera, people try and send me and email me offers. It is not for sale, guys. It sits right underneath my Guinness World Record. I love this scope. It is so unique. It is so cool. It doesn't even come to wars with me. That is how special it is. So I have two of these. This one is for play and this one is for kind of display in my workshop, but this is the number 2 scope on the list because I think that it is just the coolest thing around. Now, if something like this is literally 100% unique, you can't buy it, you can't get it, what could possibly beat it? Well, the only thing that could possibly beat that is something that's actually practical, or practical, depending upon if you're tactical. If you're tactical, this is practical. It's very complicated since different Nerf YouTubers make up different funky words. Let's go! Coming in at number 1, we have the red dot sight. Now this has been in a variety of flavors, and at different points in Nerf history has been worth over $100, so it's both rare and valuable. Not this version though. This version is something Hasbro wishes they could get rid of because it is the original modulus one, which has the green stripe. Now they do not have the green stripe on them. Hasbro moved way far away from that yuck green, which is why I actually like the yuck green because now it's unique and special. I did not like it at first, but it grew on me. So this is the modulus version of it. There was a blue elite version of it, but the reason that this is my favorite scope, and it might not be yours, is because I do have the original was worth $100, almost $150 version, and I have it because of this blaster. So I will pin the first comment that can tell me accurately where this stock is from, because most people watching now will have no idea. However, these two accessories are very rare and very valuable, and this is of course my original HVZ Death Dealer CS Infinity. It is an awesome blaster. It is more or less a showpiece at this point because it does use a pseudo rehashed elite kind of plunger system, which you can see in the modification guide for that, but this was the best sight. For the longest time during the golden age of humans versus zombies, this sight reigned supreme. It ran off AAA batteries and it would put a red dot reticle up inside this viewport here. Interestingly enough, they've changed the viewport, but it still puts a red dot. Why is this so hard? Red dot, tip of the tongue, lips, teeth, something. All right, let's go. So it puts a red dot directly in the center of these crosshairs, and then you put that red dot and the crosshairs in line with incoming zombies, and then you blow them away. So I have a lot of fond memories with this one specifically. You can see the black paint is wearing off all over it because it and I have been through a ton of adventures together. I really like it, and it kind of lives on this old piece here. It's still got the orange ModWorks sticker on it. That's crazy, but not only does it look great, at the time, and most of you won't remember this, a lot of In-Strike blasters were not yet In-Strike Elite, and they were this yellow and black color scheme that looked so good. And the complete matching of the pinpoint sight, or the PPS as it is known, to the blaster was a wonderful thing. It meant that you didn't have to paint anything, and if you found the right accessories, you could make a blaster into something completely different that was very tactical, very practical, and required no additional paint jobs, which for something like Humans vs. Zombies, where you play on a college campus, some games do and some games don't allow paint jobs, was very, very important to me. So this was my all-around travel everywhere, play Humans vs. Zombies with it primary, and this pinpoint sight lived on it constantly. I burnt out the batteries multiple times because it was used so very, very much. But I love the pinpoint sight. I think that it's the best. I'm thrilled that you guys can buy them now, because for the longest time they were very, very expensive. I do prefer the old school aperture. I think that it's much more minimalistic and simple than the new school aperture, which I don't like nearly as much. However, the overall concept remains the same. This is a laser pointer that points at a transparent screen. So take that as you will. It is not a full-on holographic sight, but it looks really good. And if you have any semblance of accuracy, which you do in Humans vs. Zombies because the targets are so close, it gets the job done. Thank you guys very much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed this Top 5 Friday video. I do have a quick announcement at the end of it, only for super loyal viewers, only for people who sat through the entire thing, and that is that I have added another item to my eBay, and it's this stripe. You guys have seen this hanging out around a whole lot. It's just been on the wall back there. This stripe is unique in that it is actually optimized for alkaline batteries. I know that a lot of people are really into my eBay auctions, and I get questions about them all the time, asking me like, where do you get a LiPo or what have you? Well, this is alkalines running with a single ultra cell here, so it will be easy to ship. And it's got this super funky swirl paint job. So I did not do this swirl paint job. A viewer sent this swirl paint job in. It was one of their first swirls, but it did not have a clear coat. So I said, that's not a big deal. So I 2K cleared the whole thing, including the battery door. Think that it looks really nice. It's an OG blue stripe inside, and I just gave it a very simple rewire and rehashing. So now it runs on alkalines, which means that it would run on other this size battery, AA size battery chemistries. I think that it is optimized for it's not optimized for 4.5 volts. I do not know why there's a spacer in here right now. However, it is very nice and runs very well. It does not hit nearly as hard as some of my single stage builds, but this is a much better entry level blaster if your school has FPS caps. It's got a stock cage, stock flywheels, and it's just a basic rewire with a new switch down in there that gets the job done. It's not top of the line, it's not crazy over the top, but it's just sitting in my workshop and it never gets to see battle and it never gets enjoyed, and it is a truly beautiful, one-of-a-kind swirl paint job, and I feel like it deserves to get out into the world even if I did not paint it myself. So that's the swirl stripe. It will be on eBay. Link will be in the description box below, and if you enjoyed this video, there will be a Top 5 Friday playlist coming up in the end screen coming up here. So thank you guys very much for watching. As always, much love. Nerf on. Drac out.
You got to hop in the three, 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 you got to hop in the three.